Welcome to this edition of the Purity Post. My name is Jonathan Daugherty, and I'm the director of Be Broken Ministries, a national outreach whose mission is healing sexual brokenness by God's grace, one story at a time. Today, we're going to continue our purity profile of King David. In the last post, we highlighted his sin with Bathsheba and some significant mistakes he made that ultimately led to his adultery and murderous cover-up plan. Now, let's examine what some of the consequences were to this terrible sin and how David ultimately responded to the corrective hand of God. We pick up the story in 2 Samuel chapter 12. And the Lord sent Nathan to David. He came to him and said to him, "There were two men in a certain city, the one rich and the other poor. The rich man had very many flocks and herds, but the poor man had nothing but one little ewe lamb, which he'd bought. And he brought it up, and it grew up within him, and it was with his children. He used to eat of his morsel and drink from his cup and lie in his arms, and it was like a daughter to him. Now there came a traveler to the rich man, and he was unwilling to take one of his own flock or herd to prepare for the guest who'd come to him. But he took the poor man's lamb and prepared it for the man who'd come to him. Then David's anger was greatly kindled against the man, and he said to Nathan, 'As the Lord lives, the man who's done this deserves to die, and he shall restore the lamb fourfold because he did this thing, and because he had no pity.' Nathan said to David, 'You are the man.'" Now imagine being David. You're busted. The prophet Nathan comes and tells you a story that enrages you against the selfish, unkind rich man, only to learn that the selfish, cruel man is you. Ouch! David has nowhere to run. His sin is known in spite of him trying so hard to cover it up. He may have been able to fool everyone in his kingdom, but God cannot be fooled. He saw what David did. He knew the motives of his heart, and now he's confronting him through Nathan. Well, God continues to speak to David through Nathan. "Why have you despised the word of the Lord, to do what is evil in his sight? You've struck down Uriah the Hittite with the sword, and have taken his wife to be your wife, and have killed with him the sword of the Ammonites. Now, therefore, the sword shall never depart from your house, because you have despised me, and have taken the wife of Uriah the Hittite to be your wife. Thus says the Lord, Behold, I will raise up evil against you out of your own house, and I will take your wives before your eyes and give them to your neighbor, and he shall lie with your wives in the sight of the sun. For you did it secretly, but I will do this thing before all Israel and before the sun." David said to Nathan, "I have sinned against the Lord." And Nathan said to David, "The Lord has also put away your sin. You shall not die. Nevertheless, because of this deed you have utterly scorned the Lord. The child who is born to you shall die." God doesn't take sin lightly, but his correction is not born out of cruelty or malice. He corrected David because he loved him and did not want him to continue down this path of secrecy and deceit. God didn't want David to think that he could continue in sin without consequences. So God levied some pretty hefty consequences on David, promising violence in his household, sexual sin against his wives, and even the death of the child he conceived with Bathsheba. But I think there's an even greater lesson to be seen in this story than simply the consequences that come from sinful actions. David's heart was turned back to the Lord. David didn't argue with Nathan or with God. He immediately acknowledged his sin before God and didn't pass off blame to anyone else. He didn't say it was Bathsheba's fault for bathing on her roof or Uriah's fault for not having sex with his wife to make it look like the pregnancy was his doing. David owned up to his sin, confessing his violation against God. Now may we take heed of this story and be thankful that God is willing to send Nathans into our lives to call us out on our sin. We need such accountability in our lives, especially when we're drifting into secrecy and deceit like David was. But may we also respond like David did, taking full responsibility and turning our hearts once again to the God who puts away our sin. Sin is serious, which is why we so desperately need the grace of God. Thanks for watching this edition of the Purity Post. If you'd like more resources, please visit BeBroken.com or call our toll-free number at 1-800-49-PURITY. Keep pressing on.